everyone to Fisher Hill. We are so excited to be here to celebrate the Land and Water Conservation Fund and one of its chief champions in DC. I'm the president of the Environmental League of Massachusetts and the ELM Action Fund. My name is Elizabeth Henry. For those of you that don't know ELM, we've been around for 120 years advocating for leading environmental policy and action. And we're also the state affiliate for the National Wildlife Federation and the League of Conservation Voters. I really want to thank Congressman Kennedy, the town of Brookline, for arranging this great location, which itself is a recipient of Land and Water Conservation Funds, and Newbury College, who said on Monday, it looks like it might rain, and if it does, we have a beautiful spot for you. So thank you so much to the whole community that came together to make this happen. I will be your MC as we celebrate the 52 years of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Over 5 decades, it has enjoyed incredible bipartisan support. Blue states and red states alike love this program and love the investments that have been made in communities like this one all over the country. In a normal political climate, we would all probably not be here. We'd be walking our dogs or doing something else, but this is not a normal time. And so we have to stand up for the programs that really make our communities better. And so here we are. Thank you for leaving work or taking a little bit of time to come here today. We have 60 days and 6 hours and 50 minutes to reauthorize this thing. And without the Land and Water Conservation Fund, we're in a tough spot. Massachusetts does not have a great history of fully funding open space and parks. In fact, we spend about half a penny of every state budget dollar on environment broadly defined. That's Department of Environmental Protection and Department of Conservation and Recreation. We've lost a third of our environmental staff in the last decade. If this program goes away, I can't foresee the state reaching in to fill the gap. So we'll hear a lot more about it and a lot more about the folks that have really benefited from it. And first, I'd like to welcome Brookline Select Board Member Nancy Heller.
Thank you to the Environmental League of Massachusetts for hosting this. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Thanks to all of you for coming. Brookline is very, very grateful for the support of the Land, Water, and Conservation Fund in the acquisition of this 10-acre parcel. The wonderful visioning for its use has been realized. It has a multi-sport athletic field, as you see, a playground, a formal promenade, historic preservation in that absolutely gorgeous building, woodlands, walking paths, picnic areas, meadows. This is open space at its very finest. Both passive and active recreational use and for all ages and abilities. Brookline very much needs open space. We're a very dense community and we don't have as much of this as we would like. This particular park is the cream of the crop, really. And many, many thanks to from Brookline to the Land and Water Conservation Fund for supporting this very important initiative. I'm going to conclude, I'm going to be very brief, and I'm going to conclude with an amusing story, at least I think so. I was first given a tour of this facility in 2015 by Aaron Shute-Galentine, who is our Director of Parks and Open Space. And the facility was not yet complete. And as we strolled around, we went all across there and all on the field and around to the picnic area here and the playground. And I commented to Aaron, wouldn't this be a fabulous site for an elementary school? I will never forget the look of absolute horror on her face. I assured her, and I assure you all now, that Brookline has never discussed the site for a school, nor have any intention of using it in that way, despite whatever rumors you hear or news stories you read. It's true that we are in desperate need of space for an elementary school, but it's also very true that we much need beautiful open space facilities in this dense town. We very much value the resources, acquisition, design, engineering, and construction that were dedicated to bring this fantastic project to a beautiful, significant, and meritorious result. Thank you again to the LWCF, and wish them the best efforts in the coming days. Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
So the League of Conservation Voters does a scorecard of every single House member and senator. And they rank all the votes and see how folks did on a scale of 0 to 100. Our next speaker, Congressman Joe Kennedy, got a 96% on this scorecard. I'm not sure what you missed, Joe, but
I'm hoping it was when I was on paternity leave.
all right.
That's exactly right.
Was it really? All right. A real environmental champion in DC, in a city that really needs environmental champions. I want to introduce the man who is the co-sponsor for the bill to reauthorize the Land and Water Conservation Fund, Congressman Joe Kennedy.
Thanks for the bailout. Yes, I believe I was on paternity leave. Elizabeth, thank you. Thank you for your efforts and advocacy. To all of you, thank you for gathering here this evening. I'm grateful and honored to be the place 12 part in this event this evening. I'm honored to be part of I believe it's 193 Democrats that have co-sponsored the legislation, and nearly 230 members of the House of Representatives, period. And I think probably everybody here knows you need 218 to pass a bill, and you're at 230. So one of the frustrations and the challenges that we have at this, as was most diplomatically stated, not ordinary political time, is that this is one of the many bills for which there is in fact a strong bipartisan voice to say pass this, to say do this. And if you wonder why, none of you do because you're here, but if you did, you look behind me and in this extremely densely populated and extraordinary community, you find a moment of respite. You realize that you've got one of the busiest throughways 300 yards from you, and you can't even hear it, or barely hear it. I've driven by that segment of Route 9 and down through Coolidge Corner. I grew up, I was born not all that far from here. I've never been here before, I didn't know it existed. A hidden gem that provides a flavor of peace and nature and community, which is what these programs and these funds are actually all about. About the dog that was in fact walking there a second ago, about the ring of a child's bell on a bike, about the ability of a community to come together and enjoy this space. And to know that yes, even in today's climate, you've got a strong bipartisan majority in Congress. Because it's not just in communities like Brookline where these funds go. It's Scout Park in Wyoming, in Wimberley Blue Hole Park in Texas, and in countless other communities just like ours across our country that believe in the same things we do, want the same things for our kids that we do, and see a role for government that can actually make that contribution and make that commitment the same way that we see. And so I'm grateful to be here today, and to Arlene and Nancy and all of the advocacy organizations and the leaders of them here, from the League of Conservation Voters to Mass Audubon, to Nature Conservancy, the Appalachian Mountain Club, and everybody else. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for your efforts to make programs like this happen, to make investments like this come to pass, to make sure that, and that effort for schools, some of that green space is protected, but to constantly be willing to make that reinvestment in our community. And if there is a silver lining out of these partisan times, know that there is still a bipartisan majority that is with you, that is fighting for you, and that has your back. We're just going to need a little bit more of that push than you might have needed to give us in the past. Thank you so much for including me, and bravo.
Thank you, Congressman. Next, we're going to hear from one of the Commonwealth's most tireless park advocates. She has created a whole community, and in fact, actually created a family of people that love parks and open space. Please welcome the president of the Brookline Green Space Alliance, Arlene Madison.
I'd like to welcome you to Brookline's newest park. I am Arlene Madison, President of Brookline Green Space Alliance, and Brookline Green Space Alliance, this is our publication that we send out twice a year, is Brookline's 30-year-old environmental advocacy and education organization. We are very proud to have been part of the story of the Fisher Hill Reservoir Park in that we hold the conservation restriction, ensuring that this land remains green space in perpetuity. This came to be because the Massachusetts Secretary of Environmental Affairs required that an outside independent organization hold a restriction as a condition of the land sale between our town and the Commonwealth. The Land and Water Conservation Fund played an important role in adding a layer of protection as part of its grant for $1.5 million to turn this long-abandoned reservoir deemed surplus by the state and land available for development into a multi-use, multi-generational, wonderful park. So our quality of life in Brookline has been enhanced by creating a beautiful green space that encourages a healthy lifestyle. This space has been saved for people, for wildlife, and for the future. We have a new badly needed playing field. We have increased the ability to recharge water and clean the air, to study nature, to exercise, to provide pollinators, to play, and to enjoy the restorative power of nature. The Land and Water Conservation Fund has helped fund and protect this park and others in our rather dense suburban community. The value of public green space is affirmed on a regular basis as studies show the value of the exposure to trees and other living things and to each other in park settings. It is important that LWCF be reauthorized when it expires in September to continue protecting natural spaces for this and future generations. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much to Dylan for your leadership, and I hope that everything you wish for in terms of being able to protect our green space will happen. Thank you.
Next, we hear from an institution which represents a neighbor, an advocate, and an educator. Claire McCulley is the Vice President of Advancement for Newbury College.
Thank you. On behalf of the college, we are so happy to have this park right next door. We watched every moment of its creation. We were so happy to have the open space. Personally, as an avid walker, and I have to decompress, this is such a gift to have this right here. But also for our students. A lot of our students are commuter students. They come from densely urban areas, and for them to have this space right next door is a blessing. To watch it seasonally is a gift, and also the family of wild turkeys. We are now, I think, in 3rd generation, and it is wonderful to have them. We're enrolling them this fall at the college, but thank you for being such a great neighbor. It is a blessing to have you here.
Over the last 52 years, Massachusetts has been the recipient of $233 million of LWCF funds sprinkled across the Commonwealth. But all states have benefited over these 5 decades. And so what you're part of here today is actually part of a national campaign to #Save LWCF. And to talk a little bit about that, I'd like to invite Arian Rubio, who came all the way from DC, representing the League of Conservation Voters.
Thank you. And thank you to ELM and ELM Action Fund for putting on this great event. So, as was mentioned, LWCF was created just over 50 years ago, and it has been one of our nation's most successful conservation programs. It's created outdoor recreation opportunities for every state and virtually every county in the country through everything like national park expansions for the Grand Canyon, helping build out the Appalachian Trail, and urban ball fields here in communities across the country. And it's even preserved and protected cultural and historical sites. LWCF stimulates local economies and jobs throughout the country, supporting our outdoor recreation and providing support to open spaces everywhere. LWCF protects these places, and it does so without even using any taxpayer dollars. Instead, it's based on a simple idea. Take a portion of existing offshore drilling royalties and make sure that some of that money goes towards protecting our land, protecting our water, protecting recreational and historical sites. But LWCF, despite all of these successes, faces a number of challenges in Congress. The program is set to expire on September 30th unless Congress acts. And while LWCF is currently authorized to receive $900 million every year on a national level, Congress frequently diverts that money to issues other than conservation. In fact, just this year, Congress appropriated only $425 million, less than half of what the program was authorized to receive. And that's why we're here to push for Congress to permanently reauthorize the Land and Water Conservation Fund with full and dedicated funding, so it would receive that money and would not face an expiration deadline like the one we're facing next month. Our communities nationwide greatly benefit from authorization and funding, and together our nation's outdoor recreation, conservation, and preservation economies contribute over $1 trillion to the nation's economy and support over 9 million jobs. So we should continue to invest in our outdoors, not put it at risk by allowing LWCF to expire. Now there are currently bills in Congress that would permanently reauthorize the bill, including the bill that Congressman Kennedy is a co-sponsor of. The House bill to currently reauthorize has more than 230 bipartisan co-sponsors, so more than a majority of the chamber, and including all 9 representatives from Massachusetts. And the Senate bill to reauthorize and fully fund has 45 co-sponsors, including both Senators Markey and Warren, showing that Massachusetts is strongly behind this program and that places all over the country are in support. But even though there is this widespread support, opponents of public lands are stopping these bills from moving forward. So in order to move these bills across the finish line and prevent our nation's best parks program from expiring, we need members of Congress on both sides of the aisle and in both chambers to call on House Speaker Paul Ryan and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and demand a vote on legislation to permanently reauthorize LWCF before it expires next year. Thank you.
So we have 3 more speakers, and each one of them is a talented and tireless advocate for open space, habitat, parks, and Land and Water Conservation Fund. First, I'd like to introduce Mass Audubon's Legislative Director, Karen Heyman.
Thanks to ELM for hosting this gathering, and thanks to Congressman Kennedy for your work for being here today. And thank you all for being here. I'd like to speak in strong support of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. I have been the legislative director for Mass Audubon for nearly 6 years, and it is one of my great pleasures to advocate for this wonderful, wonderful program. Mass Audubon's 3 pillars of our mission are conservation, education, and advocacy. And I think most people think of us as a conservation organization, and out on Cape Cod, one of my absolute favorite places in the entire world, is the Cape Cod National Seashore that was protected with LWCF funding, and which, along with Mass Audubon's Wellfleet Bay Wildlife Sanctuary, preserves a very rich mosaic of marine, estuarine, freshwater, and terrestrial ecosystems. And when I go there, I am really struck by this place, which reflects not only glacial history, which is so richly observable on Cape Cod, but also 9,000 years of human activity. This diversity of habitats are home to hundreds of different species of birds and other wildlife, many of which are endangered or threatened today. And there's truly no place like it. And Mass Audubon strives to make sure that the folks who come down and visit Cape Cod are also being educated about these natural resources and the threats that they face from development and from climate change. And we work with the National Park Service to make sure that the visitors really are being educated so that they can have a lifelong love of nature like we do. If we are going to face the challenges of the coming century, we need an environmentally literate public. We need a public that is engaged and willing to act with others, that is willing to make informed decisions about how best to protect the environment, and people who are willing to participate in civic life to do that. Mass Audubon educates over 225,000 children and adults annually, but we can't do it alone. It's thanks to partners like LWCF that we can continue to educate and engage the next generation of stewards. My son's former preschool, I'm a Brookline resident up until very recently. His preschool is right down the road from here. And it's a really amazing preschool. It's a nature-based preschool. And it's located, as it turns out, on a piece of LWCF protected parkland. Now this is a community school. It's run by the town of Brookline. And it really emphasizes the importance of caring for our earth, and it uses the parkland every day to help the students learn about and connect with and make observations about nature. It's really an incredible resource, not just for those students, but also for the local community. And recently, the protective status that LWCF offers protected the parkland from development. Maybe you can guess what that proposed development was from previous speakers. So I know that this story is not a singular one. I know I'm not the only one who tells it. I get calls in my office from people in communities whose own parks are threatened by development, but those parks often are protected by Land and Water Conservation Fund. And these parks are really, sometimes we call them a gateway for kids to really get engaged with nature and really to start along a path to become engaged citizens, to protect the earth, to protect the environment, and to really understand the services that it provides. So I think that for me, LWCF it really means that it symbolizes that parks are something that should be accessible to everybody, not just to folks who can maybe go out to the seashore or to some place that's far away, but to really just walk down the street and be able to gain all the benefits of experiencing a day out in nature. And so I will work as hard as I can to make sure that LWCF is reauthorized, and I hope you will too. Thank you.
Next up is Emily Myron, the Government Relations Specialist for the Nature Conservancy.
Thank you all for coming out today to talk about the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Thank you, Congressman Kennedy, for continuing to be a leader in the effort to reauthorize this program. And thank you, ELM, for having us and continuing this discussion. And when I was talking to Steve, our Government Relations Director, he actually reminded me that when we were in DC last month advocating on the Hill for a number of programs, including LWCF, we ran into Joe and his team from ELM in the elevator. So there, just so everyone knows, there's a lot of us heading down to DC trying to be a voice for this program on the Hill. I'm happy to be here on behalf of the Massachusetts chapter of the Nature Conservancy, where we work to conserve the lands and waters on which all life depends. Our work is grounded in science and achieved through partnerships with governments, nonprofits, and businesses. And we're proud to be part of the national coalition working to save the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And I'm really pleased to be here because personally, I'm a product of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. I grew up in Maryland, just outside of DC, and I spent my childhood going to nature camps, mucking around in salt marshes, and out in the Chesapeake Bay. And the places that have made me who I am today, those places were protected by the Land and Water Conservation Fund. So it really hits home for me why this is an important program. Touching down in almost every county in the country, countless lives have been, perhaps unknowingly, touched by LWCF. As was touched upon here, across urban and rural landscapes, this program has protected parks, national wildlife refuges, farms, working forests, historic sites, and epic views. The program brought us this park, as well as some of the most iconic places across the Commonwealth, Cape Cod National Seashore, Minuteman National Historic Park, and Hopkinton State Forest, where the Boston Marathon starts. So, and it's easy to think about all of these places as independent sites. But together, this network of protected lands helps us to build resilient communities and resilient natural areas. A few years ago, the Trust for Public Land analyzed the economic value of natural goods and services provided by lands conserved in Massachusetts. For every $1 invested in land conservation, $4 in natural resource services are returned to the Massachusetts economy. These services have global, regional, and local benefits, ranging from carbon storage and air pollution removal to clean drinking water and mitigating flooding and stormwater management, to local cooling of urban heat islands and even locally growing food. So the Nature Conservancy has been proud to partner with both federal and state agencies to advance land conservation in Massachusetts, and have worked very closely with the Land and Water Conservation Fund. So, as I'm sure folks here know, there are 11 national wildlife refuges across the state, ranging from Parker River and Great Meadows to the east, out to Silvio Oconti National Wildlife Refuge on the Connecticut River out west. The Conservancy has partnered numerous times with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and NGO partners to secure funds for these refuges. We work hand in hand with the service to identify priority parcels, work with landowners, and craft land transitions that add to this mosaic of protected lands we have across the state. And these collaborative acquisitions and programs wouldn't be possible without land and water conservation funds. The fund has been hugely important in creating the green spaces we enjoy today, and that's reflected in that strong bipartisan support that we've talked about already across the country. And here in Massachusetts, we've been fortunate to have a strong united voice in support of LWCF, regardless of political party. So along with the other advocates here, we urge Congress to please act on reauthorizing the program before it expires. We want to reiterate our thank you to the Congressman for being here, ELM, and we stand ready to continue to advocate for this program. So thank you for having me.
And last but certainly not least, from the Appalachian Mountain Club, we welcome Heather Klisch, the Director of Conservation Policy.
Thank you. This is amazing. This is beautiful. I'll just start out with that. So at the Appalachian Mountain Club, we get people outside because when people spend time outside, they become passionate about protecting the outdoors. And we are passionate about saving and protecting the Land and Water Conservation Fund. So thank you, Congressman Kennedy, for your work so far in helping all of us do that. Public spaces protected by the Land and Water Conservation Fund support Massachusetts' $16 billion recreation economy. I'll just throw out, to dispel myths, that that's more than New Hampshire and Vermont combined. We have it right here. But it's not just for places, as you all know, that are far away, that you might think might only be enjoyed with some sturdy boots on your feet or a heavy pack on your back. LWCF, like you see right here, supports spaces in small parks right near where people live, and that is where it's really, really needed. And what we need to do is continue to create more spaces like this for more people in more places. I want to throw out some information for you. There's a growing body of research that is actually proving some of the health benefits of parks, especially for mental health, that many of us, I have a hunch who are here today, kind of know instinctively through our own experiences. What we know through some of the more recent research is that time spent just in green spaces like this improves mood and self-esteem in as little as 5 minutes of exposure. Really. The proportion of greenery in a neighborhood is connected to increased happiness, reduced mental distress, and reduced stress on both objective and subjective levels. I have citations. I'm not going to read them to you, But you know, sometimes people feel like you need to actually have science to know what we actually know.
Totally overrated.
As a matter of fact, actually, even earlier this week I was reading one of the most recent papers that came out about it, and I was intrigued because it's not only, I mean, this is congratulations to Brookline, because it's not only the fact that there's green space, but the quality of green space makes a difference. What makes the quality? Trees, green, nature, water. So when I walked up here and I saw this little water feature, I thought, oh my gosh, you have it all here. Congratulations. So it's been said before today, and I'll say it again, that the Land and Water Conservation Fund has been proven effective as a program that directs a very small portion of revenue from natural resource extraction, from offshore oil and gas leases, to permanent good for nature and people. Thank you all for working for its continued protection. Call and ask for that vote. Thank you.
All right, so before we wrap here, how do we keep the pressure up for the next 60 days? I have a couple ideas. So, call members of our federal delegation, thank them for their support, help them keep the pressure up, and remind them to make this a priority. If there are places that you love around the country that you visit, where you have a summer home or family, call your congressman or your senator there and let them know that this matters. Follow this campaign on social media. Tell your friends and neighbors. What am I missing?
If you've got friends in communities that are represented by somebody who is not on the bill, have them call.
Maybe in Utah?
Maybe in Utah. Although Utah gets a little difficult these days. Utah is helpful. Other places too. So, two things. One, the more pressure there is on members that have not signed on, the better. And then second, the leaders of those committees, so Mr. Bishop and then Mr. McCarthy and Mr. Ryan, they are going to need at some point to pass bills that are just easy lifts. This one, they have the numbers, so if they choose, this is one they know will pass. It's just making sure that there's enough Republicans to give them cover, so that means we got to get some more Republicans on board. So if you got friends, family in Republican districts and Republican states across the country, have them call them.
Right on, you heard it here first, right? All right, all the advocates are going to be around if you've got questions, thoughts, or ideas for us. And if we could do a quick picture for those who spoke, that would be great. Thank you again, Congressman.
Thank you.